Welcome to Yumi and All Things She. Our podcast is about all aspects of being a woman, from motherhood to careers, romantic relationships to family relationships and dynamics, and everything in between. It's a chance to learn, explore, and feel what's genuine and imagined as a woman in this world, along with multi-generational conversations that will stimulate your soul. So sit back, laugh, smile, and even cry a little along with us as we begin our journey together. You, me, and all things she. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Deb here with You, Me, and All Things She. So today's episode, not only do I have an extremely special guest, someone that I love dearly, and I'm sure you'll love as well, my daughter Brittany. What we're going to talk about between the two of us, because this is something that's pretty near and dear to both of our hearts, is the episode's titled The 3 P's of Letting Go. And although we're going to talk about that and the concepts and ideas of letting go, but I think more important, it's the pause, pray, and proceed that gets us to the other side. So thank you so much, Britt, for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here and can't wait to dive into this topic.
So as you know, Deb has to have some sort of a definition to unravel and make sure that we're all on the same level playing field of understanding. To me, the concept of letting go could be lots of different things. What Webster says is to stop holding or gripping something or someone. And that's an interesting perspective on letting go. It really unfolded, I think, as we talked about what to discuss today, the idea of letting go of that past baggage. So let's just dive right into the 3 P's of letting go. First of all, we got to talk about that letting go. Why don't we as women let that old baggage from the past be in the past?
I think that's really difficult, right? So as I'm in my 30s, I've had to endure a lot of different situations and circumstances where I held on to my past, whether it was I felt inadequate or I didn't feel good enough or have the confidence to move forward, or I thought about what everyone else was going to think of me. I had that societal, political kind of crutch of the what if in life. And it took me, until my 30s, which is what I am now, to kind of start to combat that and overcome that. And I think today we're going to talk about some tools to keep pressing forward.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, the key of what you were saying is that it's so much of what we create in our own mind, not necessarily the reality of what's happening around us.
Absolutely. It's almost like an illusion.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, what we see is not real, but we've made it our reality by creating this fantasy or unrealistic expectation. So, there's no way that we can really maneuver through this thing called life without, first of all, baggage from the past. I think we all have things in our past that maybe we aren't excited about or happy that it even happened. But the hardest thing is letting go, or I have found is that letting go of what we thought and who we thought we were when those things happened to us, and be gentle and kind with ourselves today to say, I'm not that person, or maybe I made a bad choice and I wasn't really even a bad person. I just made a bad choice in order to let go and fully embrace who we want to be or who we are today. So we get into that, I call it the mind friction zone. And it's just, we just over and over and over again, kind of go through that place of craziness. So as we mentioned, Britt, one thing that we talked about and you mentioned that keeps us stuck, I hate to call it stuck, but kind of keeps us where we are and from moving forward from that past, is that fear of change.
Absolutely. And kind of, something that came to mind, fear, false evidence appearing real. Most of the time, it is in my own head, or what I have made myself believe is to be true, like you were just talking about. And 9 out of 10 times, it's not as bad as I make myself believe it is, because I can be my worst critic.
Absolutely.
But like that fear, I also think that there's a healthy level of fear. Like there's a healthy amount of fear
Sure.
that that kind of keeps me on my toes and keeps me kind of wanting more times than none. It's the unhealthy that I channel. So
Yes. And sometimes we can, like you said, we can get so wrapped up in our minds about the change being a negative change rather than really embracing the fact that, if I let go of this, can you imagine what more lies ahead?
absolutely. And I think, we talked about everybody has baggage, but another way for us to look at it is that I hear a lot of people say is everybody's got skeletons in the closet, right? I am not the only one in this world. We are not the only ones as women, as mothers, as, people chasing careers or climbing that corporate ladder, wherever you are in life, we all have skeletons, no matter how big, how small. But sometimes it's hard to get out of our own head.
Absolutely. And sometimes that fear of change creates this place where if we fear it, then we just simply avoid it. And if I don't face it and move forward, then guess what? If I avoid it, that kind of that bird with the head in the sand kind of a thing, if I just ignore it and don't allow it to exist in my own mind, then you know what? It doesn't. And the truth is the truth. And that's not necessarily what's really going to happen. So I know years and years ago, when you were just a young teen, that we took you to T. Harv Eker Millionaire Mindset Conference. And I know that it was revolutionary for us to think about bringing our teens. And it's not that we wanted to teach you wealth, but what that seminar did for us the first time we attended it was it let me take a deep look at what my skills are and how I deal with that concept of change and wrap it around money in a whole different way. And I was the avoider. If I didn't look at the bill, if I didn't look at the money, guess what? It didn't exist. And so, becoming aware of that and no longer avoiding what I thought was reality, then I could face it. And I can tell you, I am pretty proud. I believe I'm a pretty dang good money manager now because I took my head out of the sand. I started to look up and now I'm going, okay, there's a way to make this all work.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny. I love that you brought up that moment in time because, as a older teen, I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I know I was driving and it was before I was 18. But what I took away from that conference was learning how to connect and trust other people. I remember specifically there was this one exercise that we did, and it was, for me, I took it away as a fear-breaking and trust-building exercise. And that exercise has stuck with me my entire life, that I actually got a tattoo on vacation this past summer, reflecting that exercise and that change, that taking that leap of faith, if you will, walking through that process. I didn't know that exercise was actually going to help me maneuver through multiple transitions in my life as I got older.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad to hear that it had such an impact at that right time in your life, that it has stuck with you, and now it's stuck with you a little more permanently than just in your mind. It's now on your body forever. So
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. In addition, when we don't face that fear of change, then what that does is it then builds in that cycle of guilt and shame. And oh my gosh, as we've talked in several different episodes, it's that letting go. Sometimes I think that we are so wrapped up in what others think of us that we don't stand confident in who and what we believe is who we are. So facing that fear, I know there's a whole series of books, Face the Fear and Do It Anyway, all these different concepts and ideas, but whatever it takes for you to kind of just break through this, no longer keeping your head in the sand, get up and go. And it comes back to, I think, I talked about, I think, a couple of episodes before about this, or maybe in somewhere else, the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And that is a book from, I don't know, 20 years ago or whatever the case may be. But that particular book was so impactful for me because what it did is not only reflected who I am in the mix and how I deal with change, but that not everybody deals with change the same way. And, being, like you said, gracious, not only with ourselves, but gracious with others that might be going through this transition of letting go of the past or, figuring out a way to unload the baggage.
And, speaking from a little bit of experience and in an unfortunate and fortunate way, I do understand that letting go of some baggage can be a lot harder than others.
Sure.
And I think one thing that we connect about is we're both survivors of domestic violence.
Oh, yeah.
And, I am now a survivor of domestic violence for going on almost 3 years. And that was a really hard obstacle to tackle. But I can tell you that I didn't do it alone. And to have someone in my corner that had already conquered that mountain, if you will, really gave me the courage to face that obstacle, head on, maybe with my head buried in the sand a little bit to begin with.
Right.
But, as you move forward, as I've been able to move forward, one thing that's taught me is that we don't have to let go alone.
That's
that we
powerful.
have that support network, that we have those people in our lives that help us get over what we're trying to get over or to grow from or to heal from.
Absolutely. And the last episode I talked quite a bit about that. And what I think that you have shared with me about that is you may not have the network, or we may have a network that we don't believe exists because we've kept our head so far in the sand. And then, all of a sudden we pop up and we look around and we're like, oh, there's lots of people that love me that are going to be here for me, provided I don't take advantage of them and keep the relationship healthy, which may be a whole new path to start down.
Yes.
But building that network, and we'll talk, actually, I think in the future, this came to me while we were discussing this one, is how do you gradually, slowly develop those relationships? Because I think what got us into that place to begin with, and we're going to diverge just a little bit on this topic, is because we typically, if you look at yourself, you may run from 0 to 60 in a relationship like that. And all of a sudden it's now, their first name, and tomorrow you're in love.
and I'm getting married.
Oh, wait, that too. Okay. So not everybody's quite that fast, but it can be. And that's some of the things that we have to learn, is how to develop really healthy relationships. And that starts first with our network of influence.
Absolutely. And I think it also starts with loving ourselves enough and giving ourselves enough time, grace, and having a little bit of compassion with us, with, ourselves first, in order to grow, because we can't love somebody else, a family member, a child, anyone, unless we love ourselves. So I think that was the biggest lesson, hardest lesson that I had to learn. And I didn't realize I wasn't loving myself for the greater part of 30 years. And over these last couple of years, I've really been able to, with the help of my network and the people closest to me, really start to uncover who I am and who I want to be. And that started with taking that leap of faith in getting out of that domestic violence relationship in order to start to grow.
And you mentioned earlier, the pain there, each one of these transition points or moving beyond the baggage is at a different level of pain. Some might be really easy and some might be a little bit deeper. And what I would challenge for you to do and for me to do is to not always, it's easy to let go of those simple things first. And then we get to that place where, okay, now it's really the hurtful stuff. I mean, now it's, last episode was not an easy episode to do, which I first thought it was going to be pretty simple. And then as I'm maneuvering through it, I'm digging deep. I'm getting to some of those little painful moments that are still painful all those years later. But we can't deny that, because that's when the big transformation, that's when the big letting go really takes hold. It's not the let go of this one friendship, or moving beyond and changing this job, or, making this small move from this place to this place. It's the big ones.
Absolutely. And I think it's what you're explaining and talking about. It's all a part of the process, right? So just because we let go of something today or yesterday or last week doesn't mean that we're going to have to re-let that go in a couple weeks or a couple months, or you know what I mean? Like it's an ongoing process. And I think with letting go, a word that is near and dear to my heart is surrender. And when we surrender to something greater than ourselves,
yes,
that letting go process becomes a little bit more deeper. You're able to kind of go, at least for myself, I'm able to go a little bit deeper than just letting go on a surface level. Because that's easy to do, right? That's easy to, as I was growing up as a kid, I was the queen at putting masks on and making making everything look okay. Oh, are you all right? Yes, I'm absolutely fine. And in reality, I wasn't. But what I did is actually I created a habit from a very young age, which kind of haunted me and followed me through my life as an adult, to stay stuck. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. And I love that you paused there, because what I have recently learned is not only it's a habit, but it becomes our addiction. And so what we find that we rely on is that addiction of that behavior. And as long as we continue with that same way of not letting go, or, not moving beyond the pain, or not refacing it when it comes back up again, is that we just create that system within our minds and in our bodies that says, this is how you handle this. This is the right way to go through this, and just keep doing what you're doing. And what we find is this sense of insanity, because we keep doing the same things. Guess what we keep getting?
The same results.
Absolutely the same results. And some of that pain can actually lead to this trauma, this idea of trauma, because, as women, we experience trauma in a whole different way. And I know that I have discovered for myself that trauma can be really emotional, even for someone that's not an emotional type. And you probably can relate to that too. But once I dig, oh my gosh, it really paralyzed me in ways that I didn't know existed, because there was this thing called trauma wrapped around it.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think for me, in order for me to work through a lot of my trauma, over the last couple of years, is that I had to rely on the help of a professional in order to really, dig through that. Because unfortunately, I wish my story was, one domestic violence relationship, one abusive relationship. But the fact is that I had entangled myself in abusive relationships, not only romantic, but even platonic, friendships, family relationships, even professional co-working relationships, because we just touched on that, because of that pattern of thinking, that pattern of, I created it to be my normal.
Yeah, exactly.
And over the last couple of years, through the help of support and network and growing and really starting my life and really growing and healing from that, I've learned a new way to live and to not cling to that trauma. Because I think for myself is that it's easy once you've been a victim. Once I've been a victim, it's really easy. Even if I'm not the victim in that circumstance or situation, it's really easy for me to go to that victim mode in my mindset and my thinking.
And I think artificially place ourselves in that by either one, gossiping or stirring the pot, or, bringing someone else into the mix that wasn't really involved to begin with. But we create that victimhood or more dramatic approach to the situation because we need that. It's our, at that time, because of the addiction to that feeling, emotion, which creates this cycle of unhealthiness in so many different ways. But, to break those chains, sometimes we just have to, as you mentioned, as a child, I kept thinking, if I need professional help, boy, there's a real big problem with me. However, what I've realized is that when I accept the fact that I need professional help, There is a real big problem with me. And guess what? There's where the freedom comes. Because as long as we push against it, we continue to draw it closer. It's the weirdest thing to really comprehend, but the more we push things away, or the more we hold tight to them and push them away, the more they exist in our day-to-day life, whether it's physically or emotionally or whatever the case is. So once we embrace it, acknowledge it, accept it, which is what we're going to talk really about, these 3 Ps, honestly. We're getting there. We really are. Is that then we can move beyond it. We can move through it. We can move past it by letting go of some of that. And I think what keeps us stuck, kind of our last point of this before we really dive into the tips that will bring us to the other place in life, is the fact that it's the fear of uncertainty. We maybe don't know all the different steps that are involved in what that letting go experience might bring for the future. So this fear of the unknown kind of keeps us in that stuck spot too.
Absolutely. And, as you know, have been dealing with a situation to where I've had to really let go or surrender. And, I think a quote that kind of comes to mind is that sometimes I have to love something enough to let it go. And if it is within the universe's plan for me, whatever you want to call it, or, God, if you will, I am a spiritual person. If it's in that plan, it will come back to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one thing that I like to think about, if I'm sitting in that place of uncertainty and I continue to sit, it's like a baby sitting in a poopy diaper, and sitting in that poopy diaper, it's as uncomfortable as it is, it's comfortable. And it's that place of addiction again. It's just that comfort. So how long do we want to sit in that poopy diaper before we're ready to take it off, change our pants, put our big girl pants on, and rock and roll this like never before? So we're getting ready to jump into that right now by talking about the 3 Ps. We need to take into account a couple of things that are extremely important. First of all, we can never lose hope. That's when that depression sets in. We need to have, if we can learn to appreciate the small movement, the small ahas, the small wins in whatever the situation is, then guess what? We can hold on to, that's like a nugget of gold, is what I think about. And not every piece of gold is the same, but if I can hold on to enough small pieces, those small pieces begin to accumulate into me not going into that place of depression.
And I think also that if we remove the label of negative or positive, and it can just be as little as being neutral.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So when we take that label of it has to be good or bad away, that negative, positive away, we actually open up the gateway to have hope in a deeper, more meaningful way.
Wow, that's awesome. That's profound. And neutral. So neutral's okay. Gray zone is okay. And then whatever your faith is in the mix, whether you believe in God, you believe in higher power, you believe in something greater than yourself. One thing that I know in my heart, in my spirit, is that there is this universe and these planets and all of this outside of us that will continue to exist whether we do or not. And having faith and belief that is bigger than us, that there is a hand in what we have happening in our life in a bigger way. And so, I just will encourage you, and I've thought about this even in certain family situations, is how are things going to work out if there isn't that core belief of something bigger? Because if we don't have something to turn to that creates that faith and that hope in something outside of ourselves, then we're all powerful. And if I'm going to crumble, I'm going to crumble. And how hopeful is that? So I just would encourage you to definitely connect with those things. And of course, the 3 Ps, that's our last of it, is pause, pray, or process. So if you're not someone that prays, maybe just processing it, spending some quiet time, and we'll dig into each one of these a little bit deeper. But then also now's the time to proceed.
Absolutely. And I think the key here is to, again, not get stuck. So it's a transition, is that, we're pausing, we're praying, or we're proceeding or processing, and then that leads us to proceed.
And the importance of pause as I think about that, I sometimes I'll relate it to sometimes a big argument. And when you're not making headway one way or the other, there's two different opinions happening. What's the best thing? Sometimes it's just let's take a step back. Let's pause through this and see if maybe we were bullheaded or we were stubborn in our thinking, and the pause is really not to sit and blame the other person. It's to take that self-assessment to decide, what's my part in this? And am I not seeing something that I could see or need to see? Or am I, all of those other things that I mentioned, are we being bullheaded? Are we being stubborn? Am I not being open? Am I not listening clearly? Am I not digesting and really understanding maybe what's going on in that dynamic? But pause is a chance to take a deep breath, reassess.
And I think with a pause, what I have found, because I try to use the 3 Ps on a daily basis in every area of my life. And what I find is that 9 out of 10 times it's on me. It's not on the other person. So whether it's like I'm running late or I'm hitting every red light to get into town, I have to take some accountability and some responsibility, but it's okay to take a deep breath. It's okay to count to 10.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be late or to be wrong. Like, let yourself off the hook. It's okay.
Right. That's so true. Let ourselves off the hook. But we hold ourselves, like, as you mentioned early on, to such a standard that sometimes that becomes almost impossible for any of us to really uphold to. But we can do it. We can do it to ourselves and hold ourselves to feet to the fire, no matter what. Even if our toes are getting burned, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be that perfect person. And so it just isn't a reality.
Absolutely. Because it's so much easier to give someone else grace than it is to give ourselves the same grace.
Mm-hmm. And I used to run when I ran very actively. It reminds me of one of the ladies I ran with. And she would say when, one of the other runners or friends would say something negative about themselves, she's like, don't talk about my friend that way. And I still to this day remember that. And so she's sticking up for her friend that was having this self-talk out loud. And you know what? She just needed a friend to say, hey, don't talk to her that way. And so I think about that from time to time. And so thank you so much, Kim, for reminding me of that. We got to be gentle with ourselves as well. And then the next step is the prayer process. So whether you rely on yourself to help you through it, or you reach out to others, you find a way to begin to ultimately digest it and figure out what's the bigger plan. Sometimes in that pray process, it is the pause, and that pause becomes a little extended because I'm in that prayerful moment, or maybe I'm journaling and just getting my heart out on paper and thinking that process through. I'm digesting it. And for me, especially as we talk about next week's topic, I spend a lot of time in that processing phase, and I'll explain why. So you need to be sure and come next week. But
absolutely. And I think sometimes I have found during that pray process, because I think when you're just hearing it, the pause, pray, proceed, it's like almost a quick fix. But sometimes, let me tell you, it is not a quick fix. It is, I am still practicing the 3 Ps in certain areas that are ongoing. And in an area of my life, we call it being in the hallway. Like being okay with being not okay, and being content and waiting for this transition to happen, because I'm still waiting for doors to open or close. And I'm in a year in this transition for almost a year, but it's not going to be a quick fix sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I love that you said that, because so many times we become this black-white person and we think that it's got to go from this point to this point. And I can sometimes get myself caught in that mix too, and realizing that in this place of waiting, in this place of processing things, sometimes that hallway is I like that visual because I'm such a visual person. And then we know when it's time, when clarity has appeared and, the answers are there, or we feel confident in the next step. Now it's time to go. Rock and roll it. And don't delay when it's that time. We know. Some call it our intuition or our sixth sense, going with the gut.
Our spidey senses.
Yeah, spidey senses. I like that one for someone that has younger children that are all into that kind of stuff. But yes, absolutely. Those tentacles of intuitiveness, or the touch, or the feelings, those are the things that we need to listen to. And I know as I have gained a little more wisdom through the years, I have chosen to be more intentional about listening to that and I would do it in a corporate setting or I would do it in a work-related setting, but I wasn't doing it so much in my own personal life. And so I'm becoming comfortable in feeling those feelings, having those tentacles out, and proceeding with action when I need to for myself. So this brings coping skills and mechanisms. Hopefully we've talked enough about the 3 Ps. There are ways to move through them. I know, Brittany, you've talked about with me the concept of deep breathing. And in that pause moment, that's a great time to just kind of a deep breath in and a slow exhale out. And it just kind of just resets that barometer inside. Also, I've just really been embracing, and I know I've talked about this a couple times, but the concept and idea of meditation. And it's not a 10-minute, 15-minute meditation. What I've even started to explore lately is non-directive meditation. So where I am directing myself through that process. What else do you do and can share with everybody about maybe ways to use for coping skills?
So, I find that I like to call it my toolbox, but sometimes during certain circumstances or situations, my toolbox might look a little different, right? So I love the deep breathing and I love the meditation. Another thing for me that I love to do is it helps me get out of my head is go to the gym. And actually I was at the gym bright and early this morning because I needed to get out of my head and I knew that I did not need to sit in my bedroom and turn the television on at 5 a.m. So I got up, I got dressed, and I went and took a yoga class.
Oh, excellent.
And I was able to, start my day off, and do something different, do something that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. Because yes, I love yoga and yes, I love the gym, but not necessarily at 5 a.m. And I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but, it's reaching out and, finding something new.
Yeah.
Find your footing.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding out what makes you you.
Absolutely.
What brings you pleasure. And that might be a new process for a couple days a week. I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think just one last thing is that I love that you just said, find what makes you you. Because I got to tell you, what I used to love or thought I used to love or who I used to be is not who I am anymore. And finding that it's okay, and finding I had someone near and dear to me tell me that everything we go through in life is meant to be for a reason. But I'm no longer defined by my past. My present is no longer defined by my old choices and my old mistakes. But also today I give myself permission to validate that person, because if I wasn't that person, if I didn't go through that baggage, if I didn't make those choices, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Absolutely. Gosh, I couldn't have said it better. So as many of you know, the late, great Jimmy Buffett passed away this past week. And as I look back at his life and his music and what it did for me, I actually, my husband and I saw him at a concert at an airspace in Phoenix. And I won't tell you how long ago because it's been a really long time ago. Over 20 years ago. But that was it was just he's just an amazing person. And what I take away from that, and the only reason why I bring him up is because his songs just really were all about living this easier life, about letting the cares go, enjoying a cheeseburger in paradise, So look at the beauty around us and those small little pieces, as I mentioned, as we're going through these big things called change and transition and processing through that old baggage to get to a new place, that lighthearted way, just be easier on ourselves and take it for what it's worth. We don't have to be this serious, all-consuming person, which I tend to get there really easy. But I want to be sure that you're able to live the absolute best life for you today. So let us know in the comments below. Let us know, because we all want to know, is what are you doing to use those 3 Ps to let go? What processes, what transitions are you going through? Please communicate. Let us know. We'd love to have those conversations. And how are you using the pause, pray, proceed? Or pause, process, and proceed to let go of what's on your mind. But please please stay in touch. And be sure to stay tuned next week, because this episode, I'm going to just leave you into a little bit of it, is all about goals and dreams and determining and creating our best future possible. So you don't want to miss that one at all. And thank you so much, Britt, for being with me on this episode. It was so much fun to chat about. And I love that you shared that with me, because we had to go through some change. We had to go through some processes to get here. But I love the fact that you've shared those 3 Ps with me, and it's something that I'll keep in my toolbox for moving through transition forever. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly my pleasure.
Absolutely. And until next time, be sure and subscribe, press the bell so you never miss an episode, and be sure to share this with every woman out there in the world. And until next time, see you soon.